good, you're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Wouldn't it be cool if our brains had power down buttons?
I think mine already has.
Mine definitely doesn't, especially at night. At nighttime when I'm trying to go to sleep, I cannot power my brain down at all.
You're right. Yeah.
Drives me nuts. Oh, hey, you made it. Glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler
And Nuria Colby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today, we're going to talk about running ads. So that's running advertisements.
Right. Yeah. Whether you're doing books like we do or other business things, at some point, you're probably going to want to at least consider running ads. The competition out there is just so strong, and especially with people staying home more and running at-home businesses and online businesses, just to get more eyes on your product or products, running ads are something you probably want to consider. What are your thoughts?
I think it's essential, really. I think that when you're starting your business, it may not be necessary right from the beginning. Like, for example, when we're publishing books, ads are expensive. And when you don't know what you're doing exactly, which
Right.
is what happened in my case, they can be even more expensive because you're not quite sure how to run them effectively. And I always say to people, start your business and hold off before you run ads. Try and get into the swing of things, get things going, see if you can make sales organically, and then learn all you can about running ads. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, just learn as much as you can about the platform where you're going to run your ads on, and then run them once you've got the budget to run them. And also once you know a little bit more about it. I think those are the two things that I find important: having the budget to run ads,
Right.
and knowing how to run them effectively. And those could be two separate topics for another podcast even.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, what you said about budget. Yeah, you want to go into running ads as almost like a gamble. You do not want to put anything, any kind of budget in there that you can't afford to lose.
Exactly.
Because whatever platform you're using to run your ads, whether it's you're getting a billboard or you're running TV ads, or as most of us are going to be doing, you're going to be running ads online. They're going to want their money now, but you're not going to see the results until later.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you have that discretionary funds ahead of time.
Yeah.
Now, there are different platforms that obviously cost different amounts of money, and are, the ease of use are greater with some, and some are more complicated. But yeah, definitely what you said is make sure that you understand the platform that you're doing it with. And again, most importantly, that you have the discretionary funds, regardless of how little or how much you have. That you can lose that money and see no benefits from it. Worst case scenario, and it's not going to drastically affect your business.
And you can lose it very quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember when I had my jewelry company, I tried to run Facebook ads because there are so many ads on Facebook, and I'm the first person who falls for them straight away. I don't know how many things I bought off Facebook just because I've seen an ad. They kind of hook you in, and I thought this is a really effective platform to run ads on. And I tried running them, and oh my God, it was so complicated, and it was way above my level of understanding. And I think I lost quite a bit of, not a fortune, but quite a bit of money very quickly by running ads. And I saw absolutely no benefit from it. And that's because I didn't understand the platform at the time. So it's really, really important to have the budget, but also understand each different platform. Facebook is different to Amazon. Amazon is different to Google. Every platform has their own system and algorithm,
Yeah.
and they all do things differently. So it's complicated. Running ads is complicated.
It is. It really can get complicated. And I will tell you, Facebook has one of the most in-depth, like you can really drill down with, and say, I want to target people who are in this age range that have kids that, that want, belong to or have liked, these pages and all that other stuff. I mean, you can really drill down that far, whereas other ones are a lot more broad. But yeah, you absolutely need to know what you're doing, and it's, unless you have a huge budget that you're willing to spend where you can just trial and error it. I mean, part of it's still going to be trial and error, that you can only learn so much until you start doing it firsthand. But I think one of the big things is even before you dive in and learn the platform as far as the ads are concerned, is find out what platform your target audience is on most frequently. Like, for example, in your example, we were talking about the jewelry that you were doing. Just hearing that, I immediately would suggest trying Pinterest, doing Pinterest ads, because it is statistically proven that there are more females on Pinterest than males. And since your jewelry would be targeting more females, then that would probably be a really, really good spot for you to run ads to, or at least learn more about. You can learn about all the different platforms if you want, but I think that the easiest thing for your mind, without going completely crazy, would be to find out where your target audience is at, and then say, okay, now of these platforms that they're on, which ones do I want to run ads on? And then start learning that particular platform. And then once you learned that platform, so let's say it's Pinterest, then, and you've seen some success with that, or maybe you haven't, then you can say, okay, what other platforms would they possibly be on? Maybe Twitter. Maybe let me learn a little bit about running Twitter ads. And then you can kind of figure out which works for you. And it may be a combination, but I think one of the most important things is finding out who your target audience is and where they're at. And you can do that even before you have your budget. You can do that, so you can prepare ahead of time, so that way when you do have the discretionary funds for it, you're already ready. Where you're going to do it, how to run ads on that platform, and that way it gets you that much quicker out the door.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Spot on. Find the right platform for your customers, where your customers are, because that makes a huge difference. And I think you're right. Pinterest is better in that sense for jewelry business, for example. It just depends on the product, on what you're selling, and it's knowing where your customers are and who your customers are. I think at the time I didn't quite understand who my customers were. I thought I had an idea, and I think that happens to a lot of people. When you're starting a company from home or a business from home, you're not always 100% sure where your customers are. You assume they're a certain group of people. They might not be. They might be a completely different group of people to who you thought were your customers. And I think sometimes when we start businesses like that, we think of ourselves as the ideal customer. We think, I like so-and-so, and I had no idea with jewelry, because I'm not a jewelry person. So I didn't really know exactly where do these people hang out that like jewelry, so I just went with Facebook because I saw competitors of mine on Facebook doing well. So that's another way you can do it. You can see what your competition is doing and do it that way. But there's I would say there's a lot of research that needs to be done before you run ads,
Absolutely.
Into who your customer is, where they hang out, what do they spend, how much do they spend, on average. There's a lot to research as well. So I think we've got three things now. We've got the budget, having the budget. What was the second thing we said? Oh yeah, knowing all about the platforms, and also doing your research on who your customers are. So there's a lot to take into account when running ads.
you know, I agree. And, you know, you can look at your competitors and see what they're doing right and see what they're doing wrong. You know, what are something, especially if it's something that you're interested in, you know, you can be like, okay, what from that ad turned me off? You know, that way I make sure that I don't do that in my ads. You know, obviously videos are really big now compared to just a still image. So that draws people's attention, because especially on many of these platforms, people are going to be using it on their, you know, their handheld devices. And so you need to be able to, and they're just scrolling and scrolling. So you need to be able to catch their attention right off the bat. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, you know, and again, a lot of it is going to be trial and error. You know, you may have, you know, 4 or 5 images or 4 or 5 videos that you create or that you have created for your ad to, and just see which works, which don't. You know, you can guess based on your own personal experience or your own personal opinions or you know, your friends and family, but that's only going to get you so far. You know, you need to find out, you know, what the end user actually is interested in, and really the only way to do that is to put it in the hands of the end user, you know, or put it in, you know, put it in front of them. And so, yeah, I mean, you definitely need to know as much as you can about your ideal audience, but in the end, you're going to learn a lot from running those first few ads. And so, you know, it's still like, that goes back to what I said before, how it's still technically trial and error, because you can only learn so much on how to run the ads. You know, what should I set for my budget? What should I set for, you know, my cost per click and that kind of stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, how it runs and how successful it's going to be is really going to come down to how quickly you can pivot if you need to from the results you get with your first ad. You know, I mean, I've run ads where it wasn't until, you know, ad 3 or 4 that I really started seeing a really good profit from it. But each one did better than the one before. Yeah.
And also it's a good way of looking at running ads as a way of getting information, getting data, because you have to have that kind of attitude that if you spend, I don't know, $50 on an ad and you don't get anything in return, that $50 isn't completely wasted, because you would receive some kind of data back. You know, how many impressions did you get? How many clicks did you get? There's always something that you can use from that. So sometimes I look at my ad spend as a kind of gathering of information, maybe. And that makes me feel better when I don't get any sales from it, because at least I learn something from it that I can then apply to my next ad. That's one way of looking at ads as well. But like you said, I mean, it's trial and error, and you have to keep tweaking and trying and optimizing. It's not something that you can run and leave. You have to keep going back to it and seeing how you can further optimize your ads. And I think that's true for any platform, really.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just one of those things. It's very tricky to run them. And if someone said to me, here's $1,000 and you can spend it on ads, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get lots of sales, or it's the amount of money is not even that important. It's what you do with that, you know, how you set those ads, how you research them, everything. You just don't get any guarantees with running ads. You might make sales, but you might not make sales. So it's a tricky one. You know, you have to think really carefully. If your budget is low, you have to really think on, you know, how can you spend that budget wisely so that you don't lose too much, because you're going to lose money. That's almost a certainty, don't you think?
Right. I agree, especially early on. I mean, I agree with the fact that, you know, you always want to tweak it. One of the biggest issues I've seen from former students when I'm teaching them about running ads, specifically Amazon ads, is, you know, they want to change things like really quickly. Like, oh, you know, this one's is costing me money. I didn't get any sales. I want to, you know, shut it down. I'm like, no, you can't learn stuff if you keep messing with it. You know, it's kind of like in science class, you know, if you keep changing too many variables, you don't learn what works and what didn't. Getting back to what you were saying before about how, you know, you're still learning something. Yeah. I mean, it's not unheard of for me to, in my, you know, when I'm writing down my costs that I spend for my business, you know, if I run an ad and it doesn't make anything, it loses, I actually chalk that up to my education tab, you know, because it's learning, because I'm learning. So it's, you know, it's just education as opposed to, you know, running ads. That's just a, you know, something that I do more for my mindset than for, you know, my books. It doesn't really matter, but again, to, you know, I'm a really big data guy anyway. So I really like to, you know, to learn and know about my customers, because customers are always changing. Customers are always changing. The platforms are changing. You know, they'll tweak, you know, what's available, what's not available. The algorithm behind the scenes is always changing. And so, you know, even if you have an ad that's running really, really well, one thing you'll notice is that, you know, eventually it's going to start dying down. It's not going to start working as well, because it's like, you got to put more wood on the fire. You know, you've got to, you know, the things are changing behind the scenes. Like I said, it could be your customers, it could be the algorithm or whatever that you need to, okay, this started working, now it's not working. What can I do to tweak it? What have I learned? You know, maybe keywords that were working before aren't as popular now. So, you know, you can kind of pause those and see what are other ways people are saying those same things.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they think of running ads and they feel that that is going to be the thing that gets them sales.
Right.
And I think, you know, yes, it can be, if it's a successful ad campaign, yes, it can drive a lot of sales, but there is no formula to it, or there is no magic, you know, way to do one thing. And what works for one person doesn't work for another person. You know, you probably get the same kind of questions, you know, what do you do for your ads? You know, how do you run your ads? There's no point in telling anybody how I run my ads. I do, I'm gladly tell everybody, but it's not going to help them, because their books are completely different. Their products could be completely different. It's just not something that you can apply from one person to another somehow. I don't know. Do you feel that? I just get the feeling that that is the case, that what works for one person doesn't work for another necessarily.
Right. It doesn't necessarily, you know, it's not like an A to B relationship. You know, what works for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me.
Exactly.
You know? But like you said, I mean, I'm more than willing to offer my, you know, my tips, what I've learned, you know, going back to our episode about masterminding, you know, I'm willing to, you know, give you my insight and what has worked for me in the past, understanding that, you know, it's been the past. Like I said, you know, your audience might be different than my audience. The algorithm might have changed since the last time I did that. You know, it just, and the platform is a huge difference. You know, you've got platforms, like I said, with Facebook that are very drilled down, where you can really niche down on your specific audience. And then you have ones like Amazon, where it's really just like, it's more of the products that you target that you can specify, or the keywords that you target, as opposed to the audience that you're targeting. And then you have places like Reddit, which are actually, they do have ads on Reddit, but they're very archaic, if you want to call it that way. And I don't say that in a negative way, but they're very, you know, they're very, you know, bare bones. This is what you've got, but so is the platform. So, you know, it all comes down to the audience.
And it's funny what you said about different platforms being different and having a different algorithm. I find it really funny that I only have to mention something to my husband, who's sitting next to me, and the next minute I've got an advert for whatever we've been talking about on Facebook, you know. Whereas on Amazon, I'll buy a set of speakers, and the next month I get ad after ad for speakers, but I've already bought them. You know, why are you showing them to me again and again? And how many speakers can I buy? So, you know, there's a big difference. I find Facebook, like you said, is really targeted, and they know exactly what you're asking for. You know, whereas maybe Amazon is a bit more clunky in that sense. They seem to be, I don't know, or they show you stuff that you've had a look at on Amazon, but I've already looked at it. What's the point in showing me again? You know, there's a difference there, I find. I think that some sites need more refining than others.
Yeah, no, I agree. One thing to also keep in mind, and this goes back to the education part of it. Keep in mind that even if you run an ad and you don't make any sales from it, what you are getting is you're getting impressions, which means you're getting your product in front of other people, which is the whole point of an ad. You know, I mean, yeah, you want to make sales, but you want to get it in front of more people's eyes. And statistically speaking, someone has to look at an advertisement 7 times before they make a decision to buy it. So that kind of goes back to what Amazon does with you is if you're searching something up and you go and you look at it, but you didn't buy it, they just want to remind you, hey, you remember you looked at this, is it?
But it's annoying when you did buy it and they keep saying
no, I agree. Yeah, I wish there was a button where you could say no longer interested.
I'm done.
You know, no longer interested in this product. I don't need it anymore. But yeah, and maybe that's something that they'll do in the future. Who knows? Because like I said, they're always changing. They're always changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the important thing is to keep in mind that what your goal is, while yes, you want to ideally get sales, the most important thing, even more to me than sales, is getting more people familiar with my products.
Yeah.
And because even if that doesn't give me a sale now, that there's more chance it's going to give me a sale in the future. And then there's things like each, like I said, each platform has their pros and their cons. Facebook, you can actually, as of recording this, you can actually drop a pixel on the people's computer. And so I've known people who intentionally run ads that will lose money because later on they're going to use one of the targeting items that you can do in Facebook is people with that pixel. So what they'll do is they'll do a video, like let's say a book trailer. They'll do a book trailer and people who watch that will get a pixel on their computer. So then now you're going to come and you're going to go back, a week later and you're going to run an ad just targeting the people who watch that video. And you can tell because of the pixel. And then you have a much more narrowed down, drilled down, target audience. And they're people that watch the video. So they're already familiar with, in this example, your book. And so then you see a much bigger success rate on ads like that. So, you can, but then again, like Amazon doesn't do that. Amazon has their own little things that they do. And, where you can put your product up against another product, if you've got a product that's in your target audience and that they're interested in, and it's a good competitor to you, but you think that yours will sell better if compared to it, you can target that product. So when people look at that product, your product's right there.
Absolutely.
Again, things that Facebook doesn't have or Reddit, each one has their own pros and cons.
Absolutely. I mean, Facebook is amazing, because of what you said with the pixel, it's so targeted. But then again, people aren't on Facebook to buy, whether they are on Amazon to buy, so exactly. Amazon has got that advantage. They've got the buyers already there waiting to spend their money. So it's like you said, there's so many different platforms with all advantages, disadvantages. That's ads. That's why people specialize in ads and they teach the people like me who don't know how to run them, how to do it properly, or maybe even do it for them. I don't know. I'm going to try and learn as much as I can and continue that way. But I think also, I know this episode isn't about, it's about running ads, but you can also promote products and books and everything on social media without having to spend money. So there's other ways to promote products that's not running ads necessarily. But running ads is almost like a necessary thing. I mean, I can't think of any big company that doesn't run ads. So, that's just something we have to do.
It's just the nature of the beast in the business world now, is that if you want to get visibility, then ads are basically the way to do it. Regardless of the platform, is just to get more eyes on it. If I run an ad and I see that I got 1,000 impressions, and that means that's 1,000 people that saw my book or saw my product that didn't before.
Exactly.
And those are things that that, you know, like you said, it's going to cost you. The good thing is at least for the example of Amazon, I can get as many impressions as I want, and I don't pay for those. I pay for the clicks. So that's another thing when you're learning about the platform, learn at what you're paying for. You know, are you paying for the click or are you paying by impression? You know, because that's a big difference. To me, I only pay per click. You know, there are definitely platforms that allow you to pay per impression. I don't do that because, again, I know that, you know, that many times someone has to see your ad 7 times before they're going to click on it and buy it. So why would I pay for, you know, 7 times someone seeing something just for them to buy it once? You know, and so that's why I always go for the cost per click, you know, again, regardless of what platform I'm on.
And I think once a person has clicked, they're that step closer to buying. Whereas impressions, I always think of them as a billboard. You know, people just see it and then they get on with whatever they're doing. And you know, a click is so much more. I think that's why we pay for clicks, because they're more valuable than an impression. Definitely.
Right. Because also keep in mind that, you know, like you were saying, people are busy. Just because it was on their screen doesn't mean they saw it.
Yeah. Oh,
you know, doesn't mean it registered. You know, that, I mean, they literally could have just scrolled right on by it, you know, which happens very frequently. And so, definitely, if you don't learn anything else when it comes to ads, is pay per click, don't pay per impression. I have yet to meet anybody who has had a good story about paying for impressions. You know, it's, or at least a better story than paying per click. Because like I said, you know, or like you said, paying per click, that click brings them that much closer to a purchase. You know, like you said before, with the, you know, social media platforms, those are what we call cold audiences. You know, there are people there that are there for social, you know, social interaction. They're not there for purchasing. Whereas Amazon is a warm audience. They already have their wallets out. You just need to convince them to purchase your product. And so, you know, unfortunately, not, you know, Amazon ads isn't available for everybody. You know, it's not, I mean, obviously if your product is not on Amazon, running Amazon ads doesn't make sense, you know, so it really comes down to what your product is. But I think the core 3 things that we talked about still are the most important, which is know your audience and where they're at. And once you figure out where they're at, learn those platforms, you know, as much as you can. And then before you run any ads, I mean, you can create test ads, you know, test setting it up and everything else. But before you actually click, you know, submit, make sure that you have the budget that you're able to lose, because again, there's no guarantees when it comes to running ads.
Exactly, and those ads can swallow up your budget very quickly, you know. So
yes, and some platforms like Facebook are really good at spending your money really fast.
Oh yes.
You know, and definitely. You know, because they're just so big. I mean, they've got, you know, billions of people on that platform, that it's a lot easier to go through a $50 budget than, you know, maybe on Reddit or Pinterest or whatever. So again, just keep that in mind, and keep those three core tips, I think are the biggest takeaways, is, you know, and just, you know, again, and if we were to add a 4th one, it would be just to keep the mindset that regardless of what happens with your ad, use it as an educational moment, you know, and learn something from it for when you run your next ad.
Definitely. And one more thing, just quickly, I just thought of it, is that if anybody is, and I know there are a lot of people like that, if anybody is desperate to start earning money from their business, don't make that the moment you start running ads, because that's going to be really disheartening, you know, and that's really going to scare you off forever. So wait until you actually are earning a little bit, have the budget to spend. If you're rushing into it because you're desperate, that's the worst time to do it. Yeah.
I could not agree more. Yeah. That's definitely not, because it's very easy. Because first of all, just to be honest, 99% of the time, your first ad is going to fail. Your second one probably as well. Failed meaning you're not going to get any sales from it. not failing because you're still learning something from it.
Yeah.
But as far as financially, you're gonna lose money before you make it, 9 times out of 10. And so I agree with you. You should not be in a desperate mode and go into that, because that will be very deterring. And also even the successful ones don't start off successful. They very seldom will you get one that just takes off like a rocket. Usually you have to tweak it and kind of and it builds slowly. Again, depending on the platform that you're using as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been another great mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leaving us a review and let us know what you thought. It means the world to us. Until next time, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.